Hello fellow sim racers, and welcome to another Automobilista 2 video. Today I'm going to be showing you how am I setting up my triple screens, including how do I get this perfect alignment between the screens, as well as my camera settings, force feedback and graphics settings. In my previous AMS2 videos, I received quite a few comments and questions with regards to how am I setting everything up, so I decided to put this short video together just to show you how I'm doing it, and maybe this is going to be helpful to some of you as well. So one thing to remember with AMS2 is that you cannot set everything up while you're on the track, so some of the options we have to set up in the main menu, and this is where we're heading first. So let's go. Okay, so now we're back into the main menu, and there are a few important options that we'll cover here, especially in the triple screen tab. But before I jump into that, let's go into the graphics and I'll share just a few words on this one. The reason I'm not going to be covering it in details is because I'm running pretty much everything on Ultra, and depending on your own hardware, you may have to change some of these settings and kind of dial them back down. Or if you have, a PC similar to mine or even better, then obviously just leave everything on Ultra and it's all good. Just keep in mind, AMS2 is probably the best optimized sim out there we have today. So the ratio between performance and visual fidelity is probably the best we have out there. So you will see that maybe some of the options, you can actually run them higher than you might be thinking initially. Okay, and now we're inside the triple screen setup tab. Now, before I jump into the different options here, there is a couple of things I wanted to mention first. When I started with AMS2, I found this triple screen setup actually quite cumbersome, not intuitive, and frankly super annoying. The reason for that was that you cannot be adjusting any of these settings while you're in the car on track. And so what ends up happening is you set up whatever you set up here on this page, and then you go back into the car on track, you start driving, and then you see that something is not quite right. Unfortunately, there is nothing you can do to change on the fly, so you have to get back out, make the changes here back in this menu, and then hope that whatever you've changed, it will actually give you the desired result. Now, if you look at how the other sims are doing it, so if you take Le Mans Ultimate, iRacing, ACC, they're all allowing us to be changing these settings, the triple screen settings, on the fly while we are driving on track. So this means that in real time we can get the necessary corrections if we have to fine-tune things. This is not the case with Automobilista 2, and I hope that Razer Studios gives us this in the future. Now, having said that, the other thing I also have to mention is that after I decided to actually spend some time and fine-tune and properly set up my screens in AMS2, I have to say that this is probably one of the most powerful tools we have of all the other sims out there. And the reason for that is this particular option here, which is the physical height, which allows us to have this perfect alignment between the side screens and the center screen. And I'll tell you more about it in a second, because this is the most important option that is going to give you this perfect alignment. Okay, and now let's go to the different settings. But before we start changing anything, there is one more thing I have to tell you. After the 1.6 update, something broke in the game, and all the changes that you are making here on this screen, they actually are not being saved. Now, there was a patch afterwards, and maybe that patch actually fixed this bug. I don't know. I haven't tested it because I am adjusting everything in the XML file. And even if this is actually fixed, I think that the XML is actually easier to navigate, and it's easier to see all the different options next to each other. So I will walk you through that, where to find it and how to change it there as well. But just very briefly about the different options we have here on screen. So as you can see, we have three different tabs for the different screens, so the left, the center and the right screen. Number one, obviously make sure that you enable the triple screen spanning to begin with. And then here is the physical width of your monitor. In my case, it's 70 centimeters. This is the physical height. And I can tell you this is not the correct number, so it's not 3959, because if you put here the correct number, the physical dimension of your vertical height of your monitor, your monitors are going to be misaligned. And I'll tell you how do we fine tune in a second. The bezel width, so one thing to remember, if you are adjusting the bezel width here in the center screen, then make sure that in the left and the right screen you leave that at 0, so you're not doubling that number. The other thing is obviously the distance to the screen, and the distance to the screen in my case is around 58 centimeters, but as you can see here, I'm using 62. The reason I'm doing it is because at 52 everything just looks a little bit too big and out of proportion when I'm recording the videos. So don't be afraid to experiment with this number. If you're sitting at 60 centimeters and it doesn't look quite right, then just change it. Yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's what feels and looks right to you. The one thing that is left is that if you go to the right and the left screen, they have one more option, which is the particular angle to the center screen. Now, this obviously varies between the different setups, and you have to measure this for yourselves. In my case, it's around 35 degrees. and so then basically you punch these two numbers at 35 degrees and off you go. But as I mentioned, don't do this in this screen because things may not be actually saved. So what you should do instead is go to My Documents, Automobilista 2, and then you'll find this file, the triple screen settings.xml. Okay, so once you open the XML file, this is what you'll be presented with, and don't worry, it looks confusing, but you don't have to worry about all the values here. So the things that we care about are here at the very bottom, and as you can see, these are the left screen, the right screen, and the center screen, and these are all the values that we had in game. So the physical height, the physical width, excuse me, at 70 centimeters, the distance at 62 centimeters, the angle at 35 degrees, and so on and so on. But the most important option here is the physical height of your monitor, because this is what's going to allow us to have this perfect alignment between the side screens and the center screen. And I would also suggest, do not make too big of a changes here. So start with the actual physical height of your monitor. Let's pretend for the moment that this is 39 centimeters here. And then instead of changing these numbers here from 39 to let's say 38 or 40, because this swing is going to make too big of a difference, and so you don't know whether you've maybe just passed this sweet spot. So I would say forget about this number and start adjusting here, the first number after the decimal point. And then you start, instead of 39, so let's presume that this is here at 39.0, right? So instead of being 39.0, then do 39.5 or the 39.8 for instance. Go in game and see, and basically you have to fine tune it until you get it perfectly aligned, but once you get to the sweet spot, you'll be super happy. So it's a bit of a work, but I think it took me maybe, I don't know, no more than 5 to 10 minutes max. There is a video which explains this, and there is a formula and calculations actually to get it to this number, but I tried and actually things did not look perfect for me, so I decided to go the old-fashioned way. It's up to you. I'll link that video in the description below so you can go and look at that as well. But if you want to just go and fine-tune it to your own liking, then you can just follow my example as well. The last point I want to mention here, there is a thing called vertical offset, but this actually changes absolutely nothing. So I've tried playing with this value, but it made no difference whatsoever. So I would say don't waste your time, keep it at 0, and the only thing you need to adjust here is this particular one. Okay, so now we're back into the main menu, and we covered the graphics, we covered the triple screen, and there is one more that I would like to cover here, which is the camera setting. So you can just pause the video here and then you can just copy my settings if you want to. I don't remember if I've ever adjusted any of these other cameras, to be honest. I really don't remember. So the only camera that I'm interested in is this, the cockpit camera, because it's the one that I'm driving in. So this is essentially the FOV. I have settled for 58, and for me, I think this is the sweet spot. The other thing here is the movement, and I don't like any movement at all. So I've pretty much disabled everything. The only thing here is make sure that legacy head movement is clicked as yes, and I have pretty much everything as off. Yeah, so this is again a personal preference. If you want some look to apex or a bit more shaking, then obviously you can enable it, but for me all of that is off. Okay, so far we covered the graphics, the triple screens, and the camera, but before we head back on track to see how everything fits together, let's jump very quickly into the controls tab and to go over my force feedback settings. So I am running a Simucube 2 Pro wheel, and I have experimented with the different options here. So you have a default plus, then you have custom, and for custom I've tried V6000 Extreme 2 file, which is considered one of the best custom force feedback settings, and you can find all of these on the Razer official website. There is a whole thread with custom force feedback files, but I tried that, I didn't like it, so at the end I've settled for the good old default from Razer. So you can pause the video here, you can check all my settings, you can copy them if you want to. Remember, if you have a different wheel, your mileage may vary. And here I'm also going to show my true drive settings as well. So this is for the GT3s, and here you can see every single setting that I'm using. So you can pause the video, you can take a screenshot, and you can use them if you want to. And with that, let's get back on track and see how things work, because there is also one other thing I want to show you there, which is how to adjust your seat left and right, because this is not straightforward in AMS2. Let's go. Okay, so now we are back in the car on track. Let's see how things look. Now, as you can see, the windshield banner, there is one continuous line that goes from the center screen to the right screen. There is no more misalignment. You know, the right and the center are perfectly aligned into one single continuous line, and this is exactly what we want to achieve. So that physical height setting that we spoke about, that you have to adjust, this is what's going to give you this effect. So go play with that number until you find this sweet spot that I have found for myself, and then you start changing the number, and then you see the right monitor going up or down until you get it perfect. Now, before we end the video, there is one last thing I want to show you, and this is how to adjust your seat left and right. Because in AMS2, if you go to the options and go to the cockpit, as you can see, you can move your seat up, down, backwards and forward, and you can also tilt it up and down. But what you cannot do is to move it left and right. However, there is a trick we can do to actually do that. So if you go back in the car and then you hold your left control and press K, now what this enables you is like a free movement camera, and with the key buttons that you have binded for the tilt up or down, now you can do this. With the tilt up you're going right, and with the tilt down you're going left. But if you feel that this is too much of a shift left and right and you have to fine-tune it slightly, what you can do is hold Control and press K once again, so this is second time, and now you take your mouse, hold your left button on your mouse, and this is what you can do. So now with just holding the left button and moving the mouse, you can fine-tune it perfectly to your liking, and once you are happy, let go of the mouse. And now here is the most important thing, press Ctrl K once again, and now you're out of the free look camera. So now if I use my mouse, nothing happens. And with that, we can now have the perfectly seated position with the perfectly aligned triple screens. And with that, thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.